Okay, come on, Chris. I got a great place that we could shoot this. It's nice and secluded. I bring the GH6 here to make out all the time.
Wait, to what now? What was that?
Oh, a make out is like a videographer phrase for running camera tests.
You're disgusting.
Welcome back, DPReview TV viewers. It's Jordan Drake here to celebrate that the GH6, one of my favorite cameras ever, just received its first major firmware update. We're going to run through all the updates that we're seeing on that and some of the stuff that's missing I'd still like to see. I'd say the biggest update is we now have the ability to output raw video to external recorders. So right now, you're sending out a ProRes Raw signal to Atomos recorders, which will be great for Final Cut, and you can get plugins for a lot of the other editing software out there. So what can you actually send out? Well, right now you can get, in a 17:9 aspect ratio, you can get 5.7K up to 60 frames per second. And you can do Cinema 4K up to 120 frames per second. But for both those headline features, you're going to need an Atomos Ninja 5 Plus. For commoners like myself with the lowly Ninja 5, there you're going to be able to do 5.7K up to 30 frames per second, and you can do Cinema 4K up to 60 frames per second. So with all the excellent internal recording options, when are you going to actually benefit from the raw video? Well, I've found the internal compression does a great job with the V-Log profile of capturing all the dynamic range that this sensor is capable of delivering. So it's really when you need to do huge white balance shifts that you'll see the difference. As you can see, the internal recording will fall apart at a certain point where you can really push the ProRes Raw. But if you drop down to the Cinema 4K, then there's a huge advantage to the internal recording. That's because the external RAW recording on this, when you switch to Cinema 4K, actually puts a huge crop on the image, and that's going to really degrade quality. If you're going to use any of the very high frame rates on this camera, I would stick to internal recording. One really nice thing is, even though this firmware has just come out, within Apple's Final Cut Pro, we already have full support for adjusting your white balance and exposure with those ProRes RAW files. Now, there is one other really nice trick that this firmware has. Okay, so now we're recording ProRes RAW video in a 4:3 aspect ratio, and obviously this is going to be great if you want to shoot anamorphically. Unfortunately, I don't have any anamorphic lenses, but it's also really useful if you just want to have the ability to crop the frame into different aspect ratios. You can see it's very easy to pull a 16:9 frame or even vertical video frames out of the 4:3 capture on this. Now, this mode is available in 5.8K up to 30 frames per second. If you want to go a little faster than that, you have the option of 4.4K 60p. Now, despite it saying in the menus that this is full area, there is a crop when you switch over to this mode and the accompanying loss in quality that you would expect there. But for anamorphic shooters, if you're looking for a camera that can capture raw video but also have the built-in de-squeeze for your anamorphic footage and a stabilizer that works with the anamorphic footage, this is really the only game in town. That's going to make it a really compelling option for filmmakers. The other major update applies to internal ProRes, not external ProRes RAW. That's what we already talked about. Now we're talking about internal ProRes, which previously was limited to 5.7K recording, and you could only record it to a CF Express card. Well, what's really nice now is we have 5.7K Cinema 4K, not Ultra HD 4K, and 1080 recording with the ProRes format. Now, you can record ProRes 1080 to an SD card, but if you want to do the Cinema 4K or 5.7K, you're still going to need a CF Express card. So when would you choose to use ProRes recording? Because these are enormous file sizes. Well, it has a few great advantages. First of all, it's very easy on your editing machine to work with these files, much more so than the other compressed formats that this shoots. But also, ProRes is supported by every piece of professional video editing software since God knows when. So it's going to be very easy to work with. But even if that's not a concern for you, this does have one other interesting advantage. When comparing it to any of the other internal record modes, I actually found that the ProRes is a little bit noisier in the shadows of V-Log recording, but also a little bit more detailed. So if you're willing to put the time in and do a little bit of noise reduction in post, this can actually give you a better image. So I'm thrilled that the internal ProRes recording is a little bit more versatile now. I think I'll certainly use it more, but there's still some stuff I'd like to see from Panasonic in the next firmware update. First of all, I would love to see the ability to record some of the anamorphic open gate modes with ProRes. I think a lot of professionals would really benefit from that, and they're the people who are going to be using the ProRes recording quite a bit. But also, I know we can't record the ProRes 422 or ProRes HQ to the SD card when you're doing 4K and 5.7K, so I would love to see an option for ProRes LT. It's a more compressed format, and that would give us the ability to do Cinema 4K to an SD card. That would be a huge benefit, and I would use that all the time. So this is already a pretty major firmware update, but it's really nice to know there's going to be another one coming hopefully soon, because Panasonic has promised we're going to get the ability to record video to external SSDs through the USB port. That's going to be a nice feature, and in that same update, I really hope they add the ability to record B-RAW externally to Blackmagic recorders for DaVinci users like my good friend Chris Nichols, who's doing a lovely job filming me here today. I think it's very doable because they've already offered this in the Panasonic S1H. But Panasonic is one of the best companies out there for releasing firmware updates. I was thrilled to see this. It just makes one of my favorite video cameras even a little bit better. But thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you got some good information out of this. Be sure to subscribe. Our views are great, but our subscriber numbers are bad, so you should help fix that. And we will see you all again with more DP Review TV very soon.